Hello and welcome to Nowhere to Hide. Well, the legislative session is over, but the work of the legislature continues in terms of now you and I, as citizens, need to understand what exactly happened, what's likely to be coming up in the next session, and so forth. Did you know that we have a very valuable tool available to us in the Idaho Index? This is put together by the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and it's not just a tool to raise funds or a tool to promote a particular ideology or a particular political party. This is a wonderful tool so that you can know better about what your legislators are doing versus what they're saying, what the specific selling points or takeaways are from a bill that would make it not something you'd want to support. I've got the details on this coming up in just a few moments.
All reporters are biased, the Idaho Press Club are biased, all media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Well, Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot. That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
dark money is influencing policy.
Once again, welcome to Nowhere to Hide. If you were to ask people, why don't you get more involved in what's going on in the legislature? I'm guessing the answer for most people would be there's just so much happening, and some of it's kind of complicated, and frankly, some of it's kind of boring. You know, if you're not into crunching numbers, it's the kind of thing that can be difficult to understand, and maybe I just don't have enough time to really apply myself to learn everything by heart, and that's understandable. Unfortunately, this leads people to take it to another extreme where they're basically saying, well, this is why we elect people, and we'll just outsource it all to them and let them worry about it. The problem is there needs to be transparency, there needs to be accountability, and that does require some effort on the part of the citizen. Now, what if you had a tool available to you to help you better understand every piece of legislation in the state of Idaho in a given session like the one we just completed, and understand how does it impact your freedom? How does it impact good government? Well, I'm happy to report we have exactly such a tool, and this is in the Idaho Index. I'm going to walk you through this briefly to just kind of give you an idea of what is available to you, and it's something that any one of us on our own time could use. So this is from the Idaho Freedom Foundation. The Idaho Index covers freedom, it covers spending, it covers education with the goal of making state legislation transparent and readily accessible. Now, if you've ever read bills, you know sometimes they're written in legalese, or it can be difficult to understand. Sometimes you don't understand the process of how does it get from one point in a committee to another. But this breaks down all of these pertinent things, and I'm going to show you. We'll just actually kind of walk through some of the things you see here at the top of the screen there. Legislator scorecards, the trends, the bills themselves, the bill analyses in which we hold them up against the Freedom Index to see, does this make government bigger or smaller and more responsive or less responsive, as well as things that you can study to learn about the various policies that are at stake. So let's dive in. We'll start with the legislative scorecard. This first, there's a little note here at the beginning of the Idaho Index that tells you how the tallied votes and scores have been reviewed for accuracy and consistency. Now, I know there are those out there who say, well, this is just a tool to try to control legislators by intimidating them. But if we can be honest, intimidating them is not the goal here, unless, of course, they're afraid of being held up to their actual actions, their votes, and that is somehow, a bad thing. You would think if they were proud of their record, they would stand by it. But this is not about getting people elected or otherwise getting people voted out of office. This is simply about what did they do? What did their votes show? So this is telling you a little bit about how to maintain accuracy. All floor votes on rated legislation are tallied in the index scores here. Now, when you see the number of bills that are under consideration, you might be surprised to think that there aren't more, index scores for more of them. But just as an example, the 2025 legislative session included 19 positively or negatively rated bills, 15 from the House, 4 from the Senate, that received 2 floor votes in the same body. Now, if you have questions about bill ratings or about scoring methodology, you're asked to please send an email at media@idahofreedom.org. But let's go into some of the particulars here as to how these work. Let's start with the legislative scorecard. Now, you'll see that you have a drop-down menu where you can look at it from a freedom standpoint, you can look at it from a spending standpoint, an education standpoint. You can go party by party, looking at the district, the chamber that a particular legislator's in. You can look at the year. Maybe some of them have been in there for a while. Maybe some have been in too long. Just saying. You can see the score description, and this will show you who ranked well on the Idaho Freedom Index. Some familiar faces there, by the way, did some great work in the legislature this past year. Next, we have the Idaho Index, and this is the trends. And this shows, how the trend goes as far as Republicans. The Freedom Index is at 72% on average, spending index at 41%. That shows you there's a little bit of work to be done, right? This is not a slam dunk by any stretch. Democrats, on the other hand, their Freedom Index is at 34%, spending index at 10%. House, 71% to Freedom Index to a 28% Freedom Index for the Democrats, and 44% spending index to a 3% spending index. But again, you can look at the ratings over time, the lawmaker leaderboard, you can look at the rankings of the bills, lots of different tools. It's just a matter of what do you really want to know. Now, as far as the bills themselves, here we have, this is the breakdown of all the different bills. You can see the bill ID, you can see, and I'm only listing the Freedom Index here, but again, there's spending, there's education. You can see the bill score as far as how it rated according to the Freedom Index. You can see what stage it stands at, whether it was passed, whether it was signed into law and enacted, all of those things. And this is just the tiniest snapshot of the bills that actually made it through. You're going to see that there's a lot that goes on in the legislature through the course of a legislative session. Also, here's the index bill analyses. Now, this is taking a look at every single bill that actually made it to being a bill. In other words, was printed up and were possible for consideration. Some of them died in the chairman's drawer. Others, found their way into various committees. Some of them, petered out before they could be taken to a full vote. But every single one of these, if you visit the Idaho Freedom Foundation website, and especially the Idaho Freedom Index, every one of these bills you can click on to see exactly what is the bill supposed to accomplish. How does it measure up in terms of how does it affect freedom? Does it enlarge government? Does it shrink government? Does it raise costs? Does it lower costs, et cetera? We'll tell you more about those metrics coming up in a moment. But again, this is the tiniest snapshot of the House bill analyses as well as the Senate bill analyses. And then this is the one that I thought was super helpful because few people really want to sit there and crunch the numbers. I mean, if you're an accountant, great. Hey, I get paid to do this and this is really fun stuff. But for people who want to understand better the appropriations bills, these are the spending bills analyses. So you can see what exactly the House was considering, what exactly the Senate was considering, the rankings that apply to each one of those bills. This takes a lot of the mystery out of it. You don't just have to take the word of legacy media, or if you have a favorite conservative outfit, you don't have to take their word either. This is something you can look up for yourself because it's a very objective metrics by which these bills are evaluated. So let's talk a little bit about the Idaho Freedom Index metric. The Idaho Freedom Index provides the most comprehensive and powerful indicator of how our legislators' votes reflect the principles of restoring liberty, protecting rights, limiting government, reducing taxes, and honoring the Constitution. I mean, there may be some people who can object to that, but most people would say, no, those are laudable goals. So these bills are analyzed within the context of the metrics that I'm about to show you. A bill receives 1 plus point for each metric that's satisfied by freedom-focused policymaking, or it loses a point, -1, for each instance in which the inverse is true. And then the bill's score comprises the sum of these points. Now, again, this is just a snapshot, but this is just a few of the things that are considered. I know the print is small, so I'll just walk through a couple of these quickly. Does it create, expand, or enlarge any agency, board, program, function, or activity of government? Or conversely, does it eliminate or curtail the size or scope of government? Does it transfer a function of the private sector to the government? Does it give government any new, additional, or expanded power to prohibit, restrict, or regulate activities in the free market? Does it increase barriers to the free market? Does it directly or indirectly create or increase any taxes, fees, or other assessments? Does it increase government redistribution of wealth? Does it increase government spending for objectionable purposes or debt? Does it in any way restrict public access to information that is related to government activity that otherwise would compromise government transparency, accountability, or election integrity? Again, these are things that if you are interested in good, responsible government, you'd want to know the answers to these questions. Likewise, there's a spending index matrix, and this one follows the very same kind of thing. It serves to provide a fiscally conservative perspective on state budgeting while providing an unbiased measurement of how Idaho lawmakers apply these values to their voting behavior on appropriations bills. So each bill is analyzed within the context of the metrics I'm about to show you. 1 point plus point for each metric satisfied by the freedom-focused policy making, losing a point or minus a point for each instance in which the inverse is true. And the sum of those points composes the score of the bill. So does the bill enact, or does this budget enact powers and activities that extend beyond the proper role of government? Does it incur any wasteful spending among discretionary funds, including new line items? Is the continuation of growth in ongoing spending, if any, inappropriate for the changes in circumstances, scope of the agency, or current economic environment, etc.? And I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but you get the idea. This is taking a good, hard, objective look at what exactly is being done in the name of the citizens of the state of Idaho. I know that there are some legislators who chafe at this because they don't really like that accountability. And what they really don't like is that they lose their wiggle room. But in this case, it's your money, it's your freedoms. Let's not give them wiggle room where those things are concerned. Finally, if there is a particular policy that you want to know more about, then the policy page, which you'll find at idahofreedom.org/category/policy, this will give you insights into budget and tax, education, healthcare, liberty, local government, even media. Bottom line is, you have some amazing tools at your disposal that you probably didn't even realize were there. But if you want to spend a little bit of time at the Idaho Freedom Foundation website, idahofreedom.org, click on those indexes. The Freedom Index is there to make you a better informed, more responsible citizen, and at the very least, have a better grasp of what's going on in the legislature. Even though the session is wrapped up, there's still plenty of time to get your mind around some of the issues that they worked on and maybe didn't get past this year. You'll be that much better informed come next year's session. I'm Brian Hyde, and this is Nowhere to Hide.
All reporters are biased. The Idaho Press Club are biased. All media, newspaper, radio.
To be completely blunt here, Brian, and there are plans to expand
indoctrination.
That's right.
Idahoans are also concerned.
Horror shot.
That line would be moving a little bit farther west.
I'm like crying.
Nobody wants to see
Dark money is influencing policy.